Watch original photos and videos related to this news by clicking on the link given in the description below the article courtesy. Please subscribe our YouTube channel Listen News here. If you like the video, please like, comment and share the video. With 4 hours notice, India's Prime Minister announced that no one could leave their homes for 21 days, the most severe step taken anywhere in the war against the coronavirus. New Delhi, India's Prime Minister ordered all 1.3 billion people in the country to stay inside their homes for 3 weeks starting Wednesday, the biggest and most severe action undertaken anywhere to stop the spread of the coronavirus. There will be a total ban of coming out of your homes, the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, announced on television Tuesday night, giving Indians less than 4 hours notice before the order took effect at 12:01 a.m. Every state, every district, every lane, every village will be under lockdown, Mr. Modi said. The breadth and depth of such a challenge is staggering in a country where hundreds of millions of citizens are destitute and countless millions live in packed urban areas with poor sanitation and weak public health care. Though India's number of reported coronavirus infections remains relatively low, around 500, the fear is that should the virus hit as it has in the United States, Europe or China, the consequences would lead to a disaster far bigger than anywhere else. If you can't handle these 21 days, this country and your family will go back 21 years, Mr. Modi said. The only option is social distancing, to remain away from each other. There is no way out to escape from coronavirus besides this. Without being specific, Mr. Modi said all the steps to ensure essential commodities will be maintained. But Mr. Modi did not make clear how people would get food, water and other necessities during the lockdown, or how they would maintain a safe distance from one another in the cramped spaces many now lie. Nor did the Prime Minister make clear whether exceptions would be made for workers deemed critical to keep the country, the world's most populous nation after China, functioning. Mr. Modi acknowledged that his decree would create a very difficult time for poor people. The nationwide lockdown followed a series of decrees that had already imposed increasingly stringent limits on many of India's more than 30 states and territories. There had been some expectation that Mr. Modi would announce something far more severe. Hours before Mr. Modi's televised address, the long straight boulevards of New Delhi, the capital, resembled deserted racetracks. In the poorer neighborhoods, however, it was a different story. People were still out, jostling with each other in narrow lanes and still crowded into bus shelters, sleeping 8 to a room in shabby tenements, and showing the impossibility of maintaining social distance. Long lines of migrant workers streamed out of recently closed railway stations, with thousands of men, almost none wearing masks, marching close together to far-off villages, potentially spreading the virus deep into the countryside. As midnight approached in New Delhi, lone figures walked down the edges of the main roads, carrying bulging plastic sacks of food, the last of the shopping before the decree took effect. In the densely populated quarters that ring all sides of the capital, many people are laborers and cannot work from home or purchase essential items online. And when they step out to get food for their families, they enter vis-like canyons between cement block buildings built so close to each other that it is difficult to see even a little slice of sky. How can we practice social distancing here? Asked Amit Kumar, a shopkeeper. He glanced around the lanes littered with garbage. Nearby, one man cleared his throat and spat an oyster of phlegm into the middle of the sidewalk. Coronavirus, Mr. Kumar said, is creating a mountain of problems. There has also been a lot of confusion. Police officers have aggressively shut down some food stores, despite government directives to keep them open. Officers have also beaten journalists, accusing them of violating lockdown rules even though government directives printed on the front page of all the major newspapers explicitly allowed journalists to do their work. Westerners have been evicted from hotels across the country, and some European embassies have reported that a few of their citizens have been assaulted. Many Indians believe that Westerners carry the virus. That belief is not entirely unfounded. So far, most of India's cases have come from foreign travelers or Indians returning home from overseas. Community transmission has remained low or non-existent, Indian officials have said. Before India shut down international flights over the weekend, Indians landing back at home described a scene of utter chaos. Huge crowds were pushing and shoving and passengers were squeezed close together in jammed arrival halls. People waited on their feet for hours with little food or water. Aliya Khan, a researcher at a military research organization, arrived at New Delhi's International Airport on Saturday afternoon and was shuffled around by different health and immigration authorities for more than 30 hours before being admitted to a government quarantine center 50 miles away. "They had no idea where to take me and they started treating me like an untouchable," she said. "The person in charge was shouting at me all the time, 'Stand there. Do this. Do that.'" Still, many experts agree that putting India on lockdown, however harshly, is the country's only hope to contain the spread of the virus. "There is no option but to go for a complete lockdown," said Lieutenant Gen. D.S. Hooda, a former senior army commander. "With India's population density and the state of public health infrastructure, we may not be able to handle a large-scale outbreak. The lockdown includes schools, offices, factories, parks, temples, railways, even the airspace. Borders are being sealed between the states." Economists said a prolonged lockdown could devastate India, where slowing growth rates have already deeply wounded the economy. In a recent column for The Hindu, Jean Dreze, a prominent Belgian Indian economist, said almost everybody in India's informal economy, a huge share of the country's workforce, has been hit by an economic tsunami. As news of the lockdown spread, migrant workers stuck in cities rushed to book train tickets to their villages, or risk being trapped indefinitely. With severe supply chain disruptions, farmers worried that the coming wheat harvest would fail to reach millions of Indians who depend on their crops for survival. "This situation is worse than war," said Arun Kumar, an economics professor at the Institute of Social Sciences in New Delhi. "If we are not able to provide essentials to the bottom 50% of the population, then there will be social revolt." And yet, India has won praise from international public health experts for its swift movement, and it has some built-in advantages as well. Young people have a better chance of coping with the virus. And the population in India is considerably younger. The median age is around 28, compared to a country like Italy, where the median age is around 45. Lockdown measures and travel restrictions were put into place comparatively earlier than other nations. And the authorities in many states have already started making plans for cash and food handouts. In Punjab state, the government is bracing for the virus to spread after thousands of Punjabis living in Europe recently returned. On Tuesday, a strict round-the-clock curfew was enforced in many areas. A government milk cooperative delivered milk door-to-door to ensure people had no reason go outside. Dr. Jayaprakash Mullayal, one of India's leading epidemiologists, urged an even more aggressive response, and said the government needed to move quickly to reach millions of Indians in isolated communities where formal education is lacking and information about the virus and its severity remains limited. "The bulk of the population hasn't understood what the hell is going on," he said. "If we do nothing, we'll have millions of cases and millions of deaths in the next 3 months. India's healthcare system is absolutely unprepared. India's public health sector is underfunded and overstretched even in the best of times. India has around 0.5 hospital beds for every 1,000 people, according to data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. By comparison, Italy has 3.2 and China has 4.3. Density is another challenge. India has some of Asia's biggest slums, and experts fear what would happen if the coronavirus spreads in a city like Mumbai, home to 20 million people, where space is at a premium and it is common to find people living half a dozen to a room.